Can I have your attention, please? I think it was Eminem who said that. Can I have your attention? Today's video is me showing how I coach my clinical champions, including those for a company that I'm helping right now with a small product that I'm not even going to mention. This is how I want our clinical champions to present. I want them to present this when they write up the new product request, when they submit it to Lumiere, when they go to the VAC meeting. And if you listen at the end, I'm going to tell you a little trick to make sure that this gets presented at the VAC meeting, even if your champion can't be there. Now, to the method I use. I'm going to read this as if I'm the surgeon presenting to the VAC committee, and you'll see the method I use. But understand, talking about the product is not important until I have their attention. That's why it says attention in red at the top. And when I talk about the problem, I break it down into the 4 legs of the value analysis table. Thank you, Jim Surik, for giving me 3 of these legs: clinical, operational, strategic, financial. And I'm going to talk about the problem our facility has. Not me, the surgeon, but our facility has. And I'm going to use them in these 4 buckets. And tell me if you think I would have the Value Analysis Committee's attention if I stood in front of them and said, this is their problem. We have a problem with a simple instrument that is costing our operating room and sterile processing departments time, money, headache, putting patients at an increased risk for infection and an unsatisfactory outcome, and putting our facility at elevated risk in the eyes of the Joint Commission. So first I'm going to talk about the patient, then the OR, then sterile processing, then infection prevention briefly, and Joint Commission briefly. But first you need to know what the current instrument is that we're using. It's a depth gauge. Depth gauges are reusable cannulated surgical instruments the size of a pencil, and they're designed to measure the length of a screw a surgeon should use to implant to reduce fractures. Think of a sliding dipstick used to measure the oil in your car. It measures the depth. Now, we as surgeons drill through a plate, measure with the depth gauge the length of the hole, and then insert a screw. And then we take an x-ray or 2 to confirm that we like what we see. Some cases we only need 4 screws. Some cases we need 14. It all depends on the anatomy, the fracture, and some other factors. Sometimes the depth gauges are owned by the hospital. Sometimes vendors own them. When we put in a screw that is too long or too short, we have to remove it, remeasure, put in a correct length screw, and take more x-rays. Sometimes we have to waste the screws. We try to repurpose it and reuse it again later in the case, but sometimes we're wasting those screws. But for the patient, this means that the patient is exposed to longer OR times and the risk of infection, and poor outcomes increases logarithmically with time. Plus, the patient is at increased risk of having painful hardware after the case and need a revision surgery to have that hardware removed down the road. That's the patient. This also means the patient, surgeon, and OR staff are exposed to more radiation. Not to mention everybody in the room, including me, is wearing 25-pound x-ray gowns, and the mood doesn't improve in the room. Now, once the case is over and we send the instruments, including those depth gauges, down to our sterile processing department for reprocessing, these depth gauges are incredibly difficult to clean. Our SPD team takes a lot of time to ensure each depth gauge is decontaminated, washed, and reassembled every day. But while simple looking, these depth gauges are complicated to reprocess, and frankly, that time is likely spent on more important things in a much better way. And here's the problem with these depth gauges. They all look similar, but each manufacturer has different instructions for use, causing confusion and errors in sterile processing. And these errors end up back in the OR the next day, where the instrument is incorrectly assembled, or worse, has bioburden inside of them, again causing delays in the OR and rework in sterile processing, not to mention putting that patient at risk. Finally, we run the risk of being out of compliance regarding following those instructions for use and are at risk for a major finding or citation from the Joint Commission. Bioburden in a depth gauge in the OR is a major contamination and a reportable event and can cause delays of 10 to 30 minutes in the OR. Currently, we estimate this little reusable boring instrument is costing us over $200 per procedure in fully burdened cost. It's also costing lots of surgeon and staff frustration. We did over 1,000 plating cases last year alone, which means we spent over $200,000 reprocessing these reusable instruments, including $50,000 estimated in wasted implants alone. So that is part one. So I went clinical, the patient, operational and strategic, the doctor, sterile processing department, lead, radiation risk, infection risk, all of those things are strategic and operational, not to mention the operational part of it going back down to sterile processing, being difficult, taking multiple steps, being error prone, and then coming back up to the OR and affecting our OR. That's an operational issue. And strategic, surgeon satisfaction, patient outcomes, patient satisfaction, those things are all strategic. And then financial. I told you that this facility is probably spending $200,000 a year just in reprocessing these depth gauges. The number is probably higher. I'm conservative. That is low costs, low numbers, and low. It's actually probably much higher, but we need to be conservative. So now the question you have to ask yourself is, if I'm at a VAC meeting, do I have their attention? I think I probably do, because I started with we have a problem and I mentioned things that matter to them. So want to make sure you get their attention just like M&M does. Record it. Record your doctor reading that problem statement with this. Record it and send it. They will watch it. Nobody else does this. It takes you 2 minutes to do it. The doctor reads it, and if he or she can't make it to the VAC meeting, they are already there in the form of video. Consider it. Why not? It's better than what you're doing now. I'm Mark Copeland. I'm the Value Analysis Whisperer, and I help small med device companies get their products approved in hospitals and ambulatory surgery centers.